Hello, everybody. Hello, hello, hello.
And welcome back to this is going to be episode 3 on the YouTube, but it's number 4 in our series. So today we're talking about Genesis chapter 4, and we're going to be going over pretty much in this case it's the first about the first half of the chapter. The last half is not as important for this time round, but yeah, let's dive in.
Yeah, if you want to read, the last half, guys, do it. You're more than welcome to. It just goes over the genealogy. So it catches you up on who came from who, etc., etc. So you can feel free to do that in your own time. We're just trying to keep this sweet and concise for you guys as well. Just because we know how with TikTok brains nowadays, it can be hard to retain that attention, and it might be a bit boring for some of you guys. So that's the story behind that. Did you want me to read, Aaron, or would you want to read?
Yeah, please, that'd be good. And just tell them what we're reading from as well, if that'd be good. Thank you.
All right, cool. So we're reading from the NASB 2020 version. It's the version that has the most correlation to Hebrew, or in terms of word for word translation. We're reading it on the Bible app. So again, if you'd like, join us there. Now I'm going to be starting from Genesis 4, chapter 1. Now the man had relations with his wife Eve, and she conceived and gave birth to Cain. And she said, I have obtained a male child with the help of the Lord. And again she gave birth to his brother Abel. Now Abel was a keeper of flocks, but Cain was a cultivator of the ground. So it came about in the course of time that Cain brought an offering to the Lord from the fruit of the ground. Abel, on his part, also brought an offering from the firstborn of his flock, and from their fat portions. And the Lord had regard for Abel and his offering, but for Cain and his offering he had no regard. So Cain became very angry, and his face was gloomy. Then the Lord said to Cain, Why are you angry, and why is your face gloomy? If you do well, will your face not be cheerful? And if you do not do well, sin is lurking at the door, and its desire is for you, but you must master it. Cain talked to his brother Abel, and it happened that when they were in the field, Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. Then the Lord said to Cain, Where is your brother Abel? And he said, I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper? Then he said, What have you done? The voice of your brother's blood is crying out to me from the ground. Now you are cursed from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you cultivate the ground, it will no longer yield its strength to you. You will be a wanderer and a drifter on the earth. Cain said to the Lord, My punishment is too great to endure. Behold, you have driven me this day from the face of the ground, and I will be hidden from your face, and I will be a wanderer and a drifter on the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me. So the Lord said to him, Therefore, whoever kills Cain, vengeance will be taken on him 7 times as much. And the Lord placed a mark on Cain, so that no one finding him would kill him. Then Cain left the presence of the Lord and settled in the land of Nod, east of Eden. That is where our story ends. And if you want to read the genealogy, then read from Genesis 4, chapter 17 onwards.
Mhm.
So, yes, let's start with, obviously, verse 1, and then go to verse 2. So it's very clear here. Well, we start off and we've got Eve and Adam. So this is the beginnings of Eve and Adam conceiving, right? We have Abel and Cain as the first children of the earth, basically, outside of Adam and Eve. We very clearly understand that Abel was a keeper of flocks, so assuming he was the shepherd back then, and we have Cain being the farmer, right? And so essentially, like, he's growing the crops, etc. That's basically the general understanding from reading the beginning. Is there anything else you would add to that, or?
Yeah, I just think like if you read the first verse, one of the things that sticks out to me initially is that Eve says, "I've obtained a male child with the help of the Lord," and it is important to know here that this is the first time a woman has ever given birth. So, what she means by it is likely that God was guiding her through her labor, essentially. So, she would not have known to push the child out. She would not have known what the hell's going on. She would not have known anything that was happening in terms of that. And I presume there's other things in there like keeping them calm and just getting her through that childbirth, because she doesn't say that again. So the first time she has a child, it's with the help of the Lord, which to me that makes me think that maybe God was like the midwife essentially in that picture. So bringing it's Abel, right? No, bringing Cain into the world, and she, as not knowing how he got there, that would have been through God's help. Which, yeah. And the second time, she says, "Give birth to Abel," and Abel was a keeper of flocks. So it doesn't actually mention the second time that she was helped because she would have known how to have done it. So that also kind of gives insight into kind of like how God deals with his kids. So having Adam and Eve being the first two people in the world, essentially, that would have meant that basically they are kind of clueless children. Essentially, they have no idea what's going on with certain things, and God's been there to help them and to give them guidance on how to live life, essentially, which gives us further to the part that God does not want us to fail in life, and He wants us to succeed. So He's always going to give us a hand.
That's facts.
So that's my little bit that I had to add. We'll move further on. So next part is just technically labeling Abel and Cain. So in this case, Abel is a keeper of the flocks. So in other words, he's technically a shepherd, I believe. And Cain is a cultivator of the ground. So he's a farmer of grains. In this case, I would say grains and fruits. And so it came about in the course of time that Cain brought an offering to God from the fruit of the ground. And Abel, on his part, also brought an offering from the firstborn of his flock and its fat portions. And basically, God likes Abel's offering, but he does not accept Cain's offering. And we see here that it's interesting. It's not mentioned here how the heart of the man was when he gave the offering. So we don't actually know if Cain was doing it out of requirement or out of necessity. Or out of love. So that's important there. And as one of the things is that when you're giving an offering, it's kind of like a sacrifice. And one of the things that I would understand this as is that God may have denied Cain's offering because it required less sacrifice than what Abel's did. So it may not have been good enough, essentially, in the eyes of God. So the and then Abel's would have required more work and would have been more sacrificing in nature. So
we can tell that's true by the fact that it mentions the fine detail of exactly what Abel gave, right? Abel gave from the firstborn of his flock, implying, he gave God the first, like not the last of his fruits, the first of his fruits, and from their fat portions. I think that's another important detail as well. Giving him the fat, right? Like back then, it's like valuable. It's like from their fat portions. It's like it's what you would want as a person. He gave him the best of what he had, quite literally. Like he gave him the fat portions and he gave him the firstborn, right? And then contrast that to Cain brought an offering to the Lord from the fruit of the ground, right? It like the two there is just like, what was that?
That to me, that just sounds generic, like in the sense that
exactly.
Abel's offering was not special. It was not. It was just like, yeah, I've got to give God some stuff. Here's just like some fruit that I found on the ground, sort of thing. Whereas you can kind of tell if you break that down, that Abel kind of gives more effort and gives willingly as well. So the way that this book is written, it kind of gives off the fact that Cain is not. His heart's not all in it, basically. Yeah. So after that encounter occurs, essentially, God notices that Cain is visibly upset, and he basically questions him. It is always an interesting part where God in most cases, he always asks questions first, even though he knows the answer. So it's like, why are you angry? And why is your face gloomy? So if you do well, will your face not be cheerful? So to me, this is kind of saying, God, by God asking that question, it's like he's giving the human the benefit of the doubt in the sense that he wants to hear you. He wants to know what you have to say, and your perspective. Um, and obviously, I think we need to read on as well because there's more to this part. So it says, if you do not do well, sin is lurking at the door, and its desire is for you, but you must master it. So essentially, that reads that God is having a chat with Cain, which is essentially saying that, yeah, you didn't do well this time, but if you had done well, you'd be smiling. So don't let this thing get you down. Basically, this one event, don't let it ruin your life, ruin your day, and don't get angry for it. Just take it as feedback and do better next time. Essentially, it's also saying that if you put yourself in a dark place mentally and you don't feel like you're angry and you let your anger fester, basically what will happen is sin is sitting there. If you open your mind up to those kinds of negative or harmful thoughts, they're waiting behind that door. So if you open the door up, they're just gonna go boom, take you out. And that's a warning from God, where it's like, don't let your mind dwell on the negatives, because when you have when you're dwelling on the negatives, you will attract sin, and then you will the continual negative thoughts will result in sin later on, because the sin always has desire for you. And this is kind of foreshadowing as well for what is to come, which we read as we keep going, which is, sorry, Titch, do you have anything to add in there?
Yeah, I was just gonna pretty much say roughly the exact same thing, right? I
Mhm.
love here how he does ask, "Where's your no, not where's your brother Abel?" He says, why are you angry and why is your face gloomy? If you do well, will your face not be cheerful? And if you do not do well, sin is lurking at the door, and its desires for you, but you must master it." I essentially think here as well, like what he's saying is, you got to be wary of what happens sometimes when you don't achieve the specific result that you're looking to achieve in life, guys, because it's very easy to become frustrated and become emotional. But in those moments of frustration and emotion, our actions can tend to get the better of us, right? And it's almost like a warning to say, like, if you don't achieve what you want, just that's the moment where you really have to guard your mind, guard your heart, and be careful of what you do. That's the moment where you really have to become intentional about every action and every thought and try and really think about where it's come from. Because the truth is this: you can master those impulses, right? Because he literally says afterwards, but you must master it. Sin is looking at the door and its desire is for you, but you must master it. And we got an example, like Aaron was saying, almost like a foreshadowing of what happens when you don't master those emotions and that anger. That sin will devour you, and there is consequences. I rest my case, and then now we can carry on with the next.
Yeah, and speaking of mastering our impulses, I believe you have a school channel which you've created to help guys battle with their in this case it's porn addiction and lustful thoughts.
Mm.
So that's just a little plug here for Teacher Sing. It's called Triumph Over Temptation. I'll put it in the description below if you're interested, and we can get you on there and get you sorted out. There's a really good program. It's got a 10-step, is it a 10-step program or 10-week program or something?
It's a 7-day challenge that
Yeah.
allows you by the end of the 7 days to be able to overcome porn. 7 days for the reason of completion. That's the biblical number for completion, as well as the fact that a lot of the Bible studies will be on here on the school group. And many other things to come. Join the community. It's supportive. It's loving. No one will judge you there. We're brothers in Christ, and we'll conquer together. Thank you, Sir Aaron, for the plug.
That's good. Yeah, no, it's really, really good. There's some good stuff on there. Get some conversation rolling. Gets a good community out there because we, like as brothers, we got to sit together. And the world's getting harder and harder to live in, especially as a Christian. So it's really important to have systems like that in place, and that's really good of you to do that. So, I look forward to what that brings forth in the coming years. So we're going to move forward now and talk about essentially what happens when you don't master your sin and when you dwell on the negatives. So Cain talked to his brother in the field. So Cain talked to his brother Abel, and it happened that when they were in the field, Cain rose up against his brother and killed him. This is the first instance of murder. This is the first instance of someone killing, essentially, as a full stop, in the Bible. And it is met with an appropriate response, in my opinion, which is the Lord said to Cain, this is again, we see here God is asking the question, and it makes him seem quite genuine with how he interacts with humans as well, which is nice. And it's the way that he asks it too, which is interesting. It's kind of parallels how he asked Adam and Eve what happened in the Genesis 2, which if you watch that video, you would know. So go and watch it. But the he talks here basically and says, "Where is your brother? Where is Abel, your brother?" And Cain said, "I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper?" Which is typical. It's almost like when he asked Adam, did you eat of the fruit? And then Adam said, the woman gave it to me. So basically it's a parallel of how God asks the question in a very similar way. And then the human, in this case, it is Adam's son, answers the question in a very similar way, which is palming it off to somebody else. So I don't know where Abel is. Abel is. He is. I'm not supposed to keep him. I don't know. He's not. I can't take him. Palms it off, and then again after.
Well, it was a direct lie as well.
Yes, and it
That
was a
like it's
denying of the
different
sin.
with like with Adam one, it was just deflection, right? It was like,
Hmm.
oh well, the woman gave it to me. But yeah, this one was just there was just multiple sins occurring. There was lying,
Yeah,
then there was the first murder. Not to carry on.
yeah, but no, it's a good points to bring up. But furthermore, here we've got a very similar format. So essentially, God coming and saying, "What's happened?" The human the sin, and then it is God saying, "Do you know what you've just done?" Basically,
Mm.
so it's like the crime, the denial, or the not guilty plea, and then the verdict, essentially. So it's kind of gives up the justice system that God was following along with in the early times, but we'll brush over that because it's not really that important. What has he done? And then in this case, God knows that Abel has died because he has been told by the blood of Abel, "It cries unto me from the ground. Now you are cursed from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood." So basically, what happened is that because Cain has killed Abel, he is now dead, and we that this particular version doesn't actually say in detail. I believe the King James version says that it was a jawbone that killed him across the head or something. Oh no, that's wrong. Yeah, ignore that piece. That's my bad. So he just died. He killed his brother, and that the earth has told God that his blood is now in him and he is dead. And essentially, that because that has happened, the ground will now curse Cain as a result. It's like staining the ground. The curse is now on the ground and it will not yield for Cain. It will not yield in a blessed way. It's now cursed. Whatever Cain touches is now cursed, essentially. So when it comes to growing stuff in the ground, which is a justice or a consequence of the sin. So sin and consequence is one of the aspects of this particular chapter. Did you have anything to add there, Titch?
Um, yeah, interestingly enough, when we look at it from there, it's like I wonder if Cain and Abel would have had an argument for Cain to end up killing Abel, but that's something we will unfortunately not know. But to dive into the part where it says, "Where is Abel, your brother?" and he said, "I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper?" Yeah, we touched on the fact that I think that was definitely lying that occurred there, and
Mhm.
it was an interesting question, like Aaron said, because he almost gave him the chance to confess, and I wonder if he had confessed, whether or not the outcome would have been different if he had just simply said the truth. But instead, he lied and was actually disrespectful, asking a backhanded question. Now, the Lord responded with, "What have you done? The voice of your brother's blood is crying out to me from the ground." Now, this to me, I think, shows that, like, when you die, you don't simply die and cease to exist, right? It's very interesting how the term was the voice of your blood, the voice of your brother's blood is crying out to me from the ground. I think it almost shows that there's a natural need for justice in this world when we have been wronged, that even the spirit would cry out and be like, you know, I've been slain in a sense here. And we like, if you jump to, like, Revelations or whatever, you sort of see that that happens as well with the prosecuted Christians. They cry out and say, "When do we get our justice?" You know,
Yeah.
to the Lord. And it's like, it's very interesting how that does not change from Genesis to Revelations. And
Yeah.
then after that, it goes, "Now you are cursed from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. Um, when you cultivate the ground, it will no longer yield its strength to you. You will be a wanderer and a drifter on the earth. And now this is where we see the consequence of what happens when you do not master sin. And this is what happens when we see the consequence of acting on impulse and acting on emotion, and why it is so important to be able to master your emotions and to master your impulses. Because if you don't, it can lead to you doing things that you don't want to do, right? Such as killing your own brother, and then having to face the consequence, which they will always be a consequence, and your life will be drastically harder. God did not punish him physically, but the punishment that he almost gave him was worse than death. A punishment where he is wandering the earth, never being able to cultivate anything good from the earth. Abundance is no longer even available to him. He's been stripped of his rights to even grow fruit or do anything really. And not to mention, he's afraid that people will kill him, you know? So he even says, "My punishment is too great to endure." So the justice was shown. And we also now see in that same section that God will always give his justice. Is there anything you'd want to add to that?
I think you've actually nailed that. It was good of you to mention the cross reference there between the Revelation and that. Something I didn't pick up on, but he does mention there that that my punishment is too great, and he says it's kind of, it's interesting how the early humans, especially that we see here, they talk to God like he's equal. Like it's almost like the fear of God is missing. Where Cain is like, "Behold, you've driven me this day from the face of the ground, and I will be hidden from your face, and I will be a wanderer and a drifter on the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me." Like, how dare you punish me? Kind of thing. That's what it sounds like. Where it's like, and then so the Lord said to him, because Cain has a concern that he's going to get killed as a result of this punishment, God's like, "Well, hey, whoever kills you is going to get 7 times as much of a cursing that you just got." And God basically places a mark onto Cain, that nobody that finds him will kill him. Now, whether that mark is essentially um, like this, like a spiritual marker, which is like a deterrent, so people don't go near him, or because, I'm not even sure what that mark would be. What do you think it would be?
I think it's probably a spiritual mark. I'm also very interested to know who these other people are. If Because I'll be under the assumption that it's just Adam and Eve and Cain and Abel on the earth so far. because like who is he fearful will find him and kill him, especially as a drifter. Like, and I guess it also gives the impression of how at this point in time, how big do they presume the Earth to be? Like that he would be found and killed. You know, it raises very interesting questions.
And that's also hard as well, is to put a timeline on the early human race. Essentially, is they don't put time on it, but at this time, everyone that's alive is living on average around 900 years old. So there's a lot of time to have kids in that time. So if you were to give, I think most people in that time were having kids when they turned 100-ish. So if you were having kids from 100 to 700 years old or something, and you're having a child every 1 year or something, then that's a lot of kids. So it makes sense as to why one woman could have a lot of kids. So it talks here that Cain has a wife, and the other people have a wife, but it's not quite as important to really to nail that point. Doesn't really matter that we actually, what we're going to do is the second half of this talk is, or this chapter is essentially lineages and how people came about and stuff. And then Titch and I are going to be doing a separate study on that later on, which is basically going to be going through all the lineages, the timelines, stuff like that, which come along, and how people came about. I mean, there's a massive issue in the start where people think that there's going to be a like who's having kids with who, like where all these people come from, and that's one thing you just brought up then. So if you stay tuned to the YouTube channel and subscribe and stay in there and put the bell on and stuff, we will have an episode coming out in the near future all about that. So
For sure.
is there anything to add before we finish up here today?
No, I think we killed it for real. Yeah, if you guys have anything you wanted to add that you think we missed, comment it in the YouTube channel below. This will also be going on the school, so if you end up joining the school, comment it in the school as well. Let us know what you think we missed. Keep us engaged. You know, we're all trying to learn and grow together. So, you know, our word isn't greater than yours, and your word isn't greater than ours. Presuming you have read the Bible, just keep in touch with us. Let us know what you think. You know, tell people about it, and come on, spread the word for real.
And if there is something that you picked up on in there which we missed, please put it in the comments. Like we want to know this stuff too. Like it's all about building each other up and furthering ourselves in our Christian knowledge, in our journey with God. So with that, we will finish up. So thank you very much for watching today. Please subscribe to the channel. Please like it if you liked it. Leave a comment. Tell me how you think. And then please get in touch with the school account, which I'll put in the description box below. It's a really good community, really great people, and we will get this ball rolling. So thank you so much.
Easy. Cheers. Bye-bye, guys.
Bye-bye.